Manor Lords, a medieval early access. If you never heard of medieval early access, that's when the alchemist says we'll make gold out of iron. You just have to wait for the next updates and bug fixes in physics, eventually. Joke aside, there are some 3 to 4 updates per month, and considering that this game is mostly one man's project, Greg the dev apparently, there seems to be high dedication to finishing this game. It is pricey and sales on early access games are not that common, but as it just happens, there are some sales going on right now, which made me change my script, damn sales. In any case, for current state of the game, full price seems too much to be honest, but who buys games at their full prices now anyway? So let's run the game. When you start the game, this window pops up. Pretty normal stuff. It says that the game is in development and that you will probably encounter bugs. One good way around the bugs when you encounter them is to quick save by pressing F5 on your keyboard and then just load that save. I have noticed that I don't even have to exit the game to make the bugs go away. When starting a new game, you are greeted with this window. You can choose your name and portrait here. Some new portraits have been added in the recent patches, but this guy with absolute Chad mustaches is irreplaceable. On this side you get to make your own coat of arms, which offers a ton of customization options, but you also have an option to upload your own coat of arms, and I've actually made one in Microsoft Paint. I like it. When we press continue, we get into the game setup, and here you choose how you want to play the game. You have 3 scenarios that you can choose from. Restoring the peace is kind of a default one. You have an off-map adversary, raiders, and end goal is domination. Then there's on the edge scenario where you don't have an off-map adversary, but you do have raiders that spawn and raid more often. Rise to Prosperity scenario is kind of a sandbox one where you don't have enemies and you're simply playing a city or, in this case, a village building game. End goal is growth, and when the game decides that you've grown old enough to play video games, you get a medal. There are also difficulty templates, but these are all templates. You can tailor your game however you want, and there are tons of options here. Besides those I've mentioned, you can tweak raiders, go easy and hard on starting conditions, and so on. And then we have map selection. There has been only one map in the beginning, but 2 more have been added recently. I think a preview of the map should be here in the future. Maps are divided into regions, and resources, fertility, and your starting region is at random. You can go into a madness where you start the game for 100 times until you get the exact starting region and resources you want, but I would recommend going in without a plan and work with what you get. It makes for an interesting playthrough. Manor Lords is based more on economy than war, and games I would closely relate to it is Settlers and Banished, but when the time comes and you have to send your poor peasants with some spears and bows against the enemy, there is a lot to it actually. Stances and morale of your troops, terrain features and weather, but also what equipment they are wearing. And there are mercenaries too. Great for early game when you want your peasants working instead of fighting, and excellent cannon fodder afterwards. Economy is also fleshed out well enough to give you multiple ways on how you want to grow your 5 homeless families into a village and eventually into a town, and it's nothing novel really. You gather, mine, hunt, plow, sow and harvest. Some resources are used directly and some must be reprocessed. There is no tech tree though. You have the development tree that kind of substitutes the tech tree, and that is only half finished at this point. Also you have policies tab that is kinda useless right now. Where this game shines though is the way you build your town. There is no grid here, and while I have nothing against grids if they are done properly, Frostpunk is a great example of grids done properly, having no grid at all does bring a possibility to build up a realistic looking town that you can shape into its surroundings, like along the curvy main road or against a tree line. On Manor Lords website it's marketed as organic building, and I don't know man, I thought food can be organic. In any case, it's good, and here's why. You see, you don't actually build houses, you mark burg... I can't spell this, I'll just call it Burgage plot. So you mark your Burgage plot, and depending on its size it can have a backyard and or an extension for one more family on that plot. Extensions are built after the main house and cost additional resources, and backyards can be upgraded into a food producing one, or you can have a craftsman or a artisan or whatever they are called living and working there. They can make more advanced goods like tools, shoes, shields, and such. So, you don't build a separate building like cobbler to make shoes, but a family gets a cobbler extension and they start making shoes. Downside is that all families living in that house will be cobbling, and if you have an extension for additional family, plus the plot is level 3 which makes place for even more families, you will potentially have 4 families that are just cobbling around, and I found that in most cases you don't really need that. You might want to export some goods, but mostly you will only want to make, let's say, 80 shoes for your people and have some in reserve. Goods like this don't degrade or get used up, so once a person has shoes, he has them for life. Because of that, this game asks of you to make only some of the goods continuously for trading while you are expected to buy the rest. Therefore, you have to make sure that whatever goods you are making can be sustained. For cobbler, you would need a lot of hides that has to be processed into leather as an example. In my opinion though, there should be an option on how many families on that burgage plot are bound to cobble for eternity, or change that workshop into something else, maybe in a future patch. I mean, you could demolish the plot and then make a new one, so if there is such an easy workaround, why not just give the option to change the workshop and be over with it? Your manor is something special too. Well, this game is called Manor Lords, so it is expected. By building it, you can finally start taxing your poor peasants, but what's good about your manor is that you can always open your castle planner and expand it. And you get a retinue of 5 men-at-arms with maximum of 12. That maximum can be increased to 24 by building a garrison tower, and as it stands right now, not much else can be done here. This building is just a placeholder, this one is not functional, walls do work though, but nah. We'll see how this progresses with the future updates. This is called a castle planner though, so I have high expectations here, like castles and such. Fields and pastures are also built in a way you build your burgage plots. 4 nodes that define the size. It's gridless and snaps to roads and other buildings, just like those plots. A difference here is that you have to make sure that you have the fertility for your fields, and the region of the map is either fertile or not. Simple as that, but also stupid as that. Totally unrealistic compared to organic village building and stuff that they're marketing. I get that there is a game balance reason for this, but I would also argue that a map should have been made realistically by spreading the fertility around and then balancing around that. Make land near rivers more fertile. Make barley more fertile on higher elevation than wheat. If there is rich wildlife, make land around them less fertile because lambs and boars will eat your crops. And there is your natural balance already. You either get the crops or the wildlife. If you start near a river, you will have to go uphill for barley to make that sweet mead. Let's start with the bad things in this game. Ponds. It is a fairly new addition, but it's worth mentioning that they are all perfect circles and spawn at random places like other resources do, and that makes them look out of place. Like that they don't belong there, which makes a fairly nice looking map cratered. And what's with all the rivers, is there no fish there? And then there is this balance of realism. The aforementioned land fertility and ponds, but also families that always come in a pack of 3 people, not being able to change a workshop type and some other small nuances. I get that the reasoning for most of my complaints are the game balance purpose, and some of it can be overlooked. This game, however, is quite immersive and for the most part focuses on realism, so when you really get into it, those nuances come and poke you in the eyes. Then there's snapping. For the most part, it works fine, but until you realize that you can use roads to outline where exactly you want your Borgage plot or marketplace, it can be quite tedious. We should be able to turn off snapping. And since I'm giving tips here, 2 corpse pit-sized Borgage plots is a perfect size for a vegetable garden, and a 3 to 4 corpse pit-sized Borgage plot is recommended for orchards. Also, this map that lets you build bridges already has bridges, and a lot of them. It's another thing that breaks that realism. I mean, who built so much bridges in the middle of nowhere? I get that there are trade routes, but these 2 bridges here? Why? I get an update where I can build bridges and they're already built for me. Also, there are no hearts on the outhouse doors. Wait, this guy has an outhouse right at the house entrance? Well, I guess there are advantages to that in the winter. Now let's get to the good stuff. And on top of the list is building your village. It's gridless, growth is, well, organic as they advertise it, and building around natural resources and landscape is great. Sometimes you will just find yourself pressing Ctrl C and marveling your magnificent city planning skills. It does not get boring, and with every new start at some new location on the map, you get a different challenge. Many different resources that you have to make in order to grow your village and improve your military is also a good plus. Balancing around that in this early stage is quite good and playable, and I'm sure there is more to come, as for some resources like Vax, there is no other usage than trading. So, if you like the challenge of balancing economy in your town, this is a game for you. Graphics look nice too, even when you walk around in third person, and although water does need an overhaul, especially now that we get ponds and rivers, rest of the game looks quite nice, and I get a stable and smooth 60 FPS on a 3080 on max settings and 1440p. I can get up to 144 FPS, which is my monitor's limit, by removing the FPS limiter and lowering the quality a bit, but honestly I don't need 144 FPS in a game like this, and I'd rather have my PC silent. It's nice to see such a stable early access game, and even though it does get buggy from time to time, just reloading the game fixes that, and it's not that often. And finally, war. Tactics are vital here. What type of troops you are going against? What's the weather like? Do your archers have a clear line of sight? Equipment that you provided them, and much more. For a game that looks and feels like a city, a village building one, this does come at a surprise and a good one. You don't build barracks that have army just spawn out of it. Your peasants are the militia, and as you rally them, they drop whatever they are working, get the weapons that they have stored in their houses, and get ready to defend you, the lord of them all. I don't want to go too much into details, as I might have spoiled much by now, so I'll just say it still lacks in balance a bit, but it's great for early access and it's really interesting. Now, I know that I have not gone through everything, like development policies, and I've talked only a little bit about military, but I wanted to show you some core things around the game without too much spoilers, just so that you can decide better on whether you should spend your money here, and honestly, smart thing would be to just wait for a finished product. This is playable, and Greg, the solo developer, would probably appreciate your money, but I've burned myself too often on early access and pre-orders that I cannot recommend any unfinished product. That said, this game deserves to be in the back of your mind, or maybe wishlist, so that you can check it out when it's finished. Thanks for watching.